today is for us to elect a vice chair. Is there a nomination?
Madam Chair, I'm not sure who's interested in serving. I know Councillor Grau. Councillor Grau, are you interested in being the vice chair?
I'm here, sorry. I'm driving and so I had to find the button. I'd be happy to.
Okay, Madam Chair, I'd like to nominate Councillor Grau as the vice chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pena. Is there any other nominations from the committee? With that, Mr. Minicucci, do we have to take a roll call vote on this item, or can we just vote based upon raising our hand?
I would assume you can vote by raising your hands.
Okay, thank you for that. So all those in favor of Councillor Grout as the vice chair for the Intergovernmental Legislative Relations Committee, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Unanimously selected Councillor Grout. So thank you for your willingness, Councillor, to serve.
Thank you.
Up next, we have a report from our state lobbyists. I think we will start with Mr. Thompson. Thank you for being here. I know it's a busy time for you right now, and I appreciate you making the time, and hopefully this 5 o'clock hour works well for you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Hi, everybody. The pace has really started to pick up just in the past few days. I mean, it's so weird because we're seeing not as many bills coming down as fast, and the legislature and the governor have indicated they want to focus, kind of front load the session, working on crime bills and some other stuff. And so it's interesting to watch how some of that's working. But I will say, from a capital outlay perspective, I just feel like, I'm just really proud of the city of Albuquerque. I think just by far better prepared than any other entity out there. The work of Miss Anaya and her team, and then even the council staff has been amazing. And so I've had a chance with 4 counselors to be visiting with folks, and Miss Anaya has been up quite a bit. So it's awesome. And so, in a year like this where you have such a turnover in the legislature and you have reauthorizations, there's just so many things that can happen with new members. And I just feel like we're extremely well prepared. And then I will also say just the collaboration with like Gus Pedrati and the firefighters. It's an incredible partnership. And so those things are going so well that it's helping us in other fronts. It's giving us better access upstairs in the governor's office. It's just giving us better traction with committee chairs and members. So I feel like we're in a very unique position to do really, really well this session. They're having, as it relates to the bills that I know Mr. Park is working in earnest on, like they're doing what Chairman Cervantes likes to do, these like sessions where they really drill down on specific issues. And so they're doing a lot of that. I think the question for us is how we want to use our expertise when we want to lend our expertise of our different heads of our agencies, et cetera. But the table is set for us to do really well.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Is there any questions for Mr. Thompson? Anyone?
Madam Chair, just one note. Mr. Park said he's judiciary committee hearing's gone over, so he won't be able to make it.
Thank you, Mr. Minicucci. I heard that from staff here too. So sounds like he's very communicative, which is great. I appreciate him providing that update. If there's no other questions for Mr. Thompson, I just wanted to move on then to Mr. O'Donnell. But before, I just want to say thank you, Mr. Thompson, for your, I know you're really focused on, for us, and I appreciate it. And I think our team recognizes that as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Madam Chair, thank you. I have a brief report that covers three areas. The federal spending pause that OMB issued on Monday, where we are with the FY25 appropriations, and then the reconciliation process, which is being formulated and yet to get officially underway. So on the spending pause, as I sent out, Kyriakis and I sent information this afternoon that indicated that the OMB order to pause federal spending had been rescinded. And I think the amount of questions raised by constituents, by members of Congress, by a number of groups and local governments caused the White House and OMB to understand that they had gotten probably further out over their skis than they thought they were. So this has been paused. I heard a report this afternoon from the Attorney General of Maryland, who said that, yes, he is aware of the fact that they have rescinded this order, but he's not sure what that means as far as OMB's interaction with agencies about trying to still go through with holding back funding or slow walking funding. So we will definitely hear more about this in the next few days. On the FY25 appropriations, so there are two things, as you know, that are in play. It's the regular appropriations bill for FY25 to be finished, and we're operating right now under a CR because they haven't reached agreement. The major issue really is the difference in the amount of top line spending that the House Appropriations Committee has as opposed to the Senate appropriations. The Senate number is higher. So they're working on resolving those differences. We have a continuing resolution that goes to March 14th. Hopefully they will be able to resolve their differences and have a final bill. If that's the case, the earmarks that were in the bills for the city of Albuquerque should be in the final appropriations bill for FY25. If they can't reach agreement by March 14th, it's possible they might need a little more time given the number of different activities that they're engaged in, like reconciliation, budget hearings for FY26. They may need a short time extension. If in fact they do a CR for the full year, that means that they're not allowed to spend money on new projects, which means earmarks would be dropped. Regarding the FY26 earmarking process, Kyriakis and I have had several discussions with New Mexico, Arizona, California congressional offices about what their read is. And we heard this afternoon that one of the congressional offices in California has actually set a deadline. I forgot what the date is in March, but actually set a deadline for submitting their earmark requests. And one of the things that in a conference of mayors conversation earlier this week we heard is you can fully expect that when they do announce the FY26 earmarks availability to apply for them, that we're going to probably have about a week to turn around the requests that we make to each congressional office. Now, some offices may have a little different time frame, but what we heard was the expectation is it's going to be on the House side, it's going to be very short, probably a week. Related to that, I just want to say I have had, Kyriakis and I have had discussions with Mr. Anderson and Mr. Parkinson and Mr. Menicucci about the project lists that have been submitted that are on the administration's list and on the council's list. And we've begun to discuss those in terms of which ones would be most competitive, which ones might be better for a grant, and then ones that may not be ready for funding, whether it's with a grant or an earmark. So I expect that Mr. Anderson, Mr. Parkinson, and Mr. Menacucci and myself and Kyriakis will be continuing that discussion. If not by the end of the week, we will continue it next week. Reconciliation. So this is what's going on now with reconciliation. This is really a way to control revenues, either through taxes or program cuts. And in order to do the program cuts, you have to change authorizing legislation, which is why you have to do, it's a very complicated process and cumbersome, but it's why when you do reconciliation, you're not just talking about whether you're going to raise taxes or cut taxes, but if you're going to try and save money out of federal programs, you have to go back and change authorizing legislation, which includes, annual spending figures that they give in an appropriations bill. So, the Republicans are meeting in Florida, House Republicans are meeting in Florida to come up with those numbers. And I sent earlier today, I think I sent something on the transportation numbers, what they're looking at. And you can expect that when it comes to electric vehicle charging, that kind of infrastructure, you're going to see those programs cut. And the other thing they do in reconciliation is they will set the overall discretionary spending levels for additional fiscal years. So this is a way that as long as the Republicans are in charge of both houses and the White House, if they set those discretionary spending caps for the next few years, we will know how much funding, at least at a top level, there's going to be for the programs urban programs that the city's most interested in. The final thing is Senator Heinrich, who's on the Appropriations Committee, was chair of the Ag subcommittee on the Senate side, Agriculture Committee. He's now become chair of the legislative subcommittee, which really is the administration of the House, the Senate, Capitol Hill. Not necessarily real relevant to New Mexico interests, but that's where he's gone as the ranking member. He is the ranking member on the full Energy and Natural Resources Committee. And Senator Lujan has become a member of the Senate Finance Committee, which is taxes, revenues, expenditures. So that's a good appointment for Senator Lujan, and it's going to put him in the middle of some of the reconciliation discussions that are going on. Madam Chair, that's the summary I want to give and my report. And if there are questions, I'm glad to try and answer.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. Are there any questions for Mr. O'Donnell from the committee or others?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Counselor.
So, Mr. O'Donnell, just, yesterday was, just really threw everyone for a loop. So, kind of, I know it's been paused, and you're saying that you think they're still going to continue with these, grant funding cuts, but they're going to go back and reconcile? Is that what you're?
Councilor Pena, Madam Chair, no. That's reconciliation is different than what they're doing with the pause in federal spending. What I should say about the pause in federal spending is really from the number of years I've observed new administrations coming in, you can really make changes to the way programs operate without making a major statement about what you're doing. What the administration did, and I think part of this may be because they were also dealing with an acting head of OMB, they came up with this idea of wanting to align spending with some of the executive orders that they put out. Agencies can make determinations when they're evaluating grants. There's criteria that they're supposed to use. I'm not saying that they would ignore some of the criteria that's been discussed that are reasons why they want to change some of this federal funding. But I think what's going to happen as a result of this rescinding the OMB order is that we're just going to go forward. When grant applications come in, you're probably going to see the administration, when they release a grant announcement, say that these are the eligibility criteria. These are the things that are most important. All they were trying to do with this OMB guidance was to align what the administration's priorities are in terms of spending. And it was something that drew more attention than I think they thought they were going to get. And too many people complained. So they decided this is just too complex and too controversial. Let's just drop it. And when we announce grant applications, we can do what we want, and you're going to have to follow the law, but we can make sure that certain eligibility criteria are the primary ones to be considered. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell, because I know when new administrations come in, they make changes, but with that memo being so vague and just kind of a broad, stroke of the brush, I think it just put me on alert, right? So even though this does occur.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. O'Donnell, I think we, this afternoon, just to follow on Councillor Pena's question, just this afternoon, we understood that there may be actually talk of another, like the rescension, they rescinded the memo, but that there may be something coming that is like a return of that some version of the memo. Have you heard any indication that there is additional communication related to freeze?
I have not actually heard that, but when I heard this report from the Maryland Attorney General about the fact that, yes, they rescinded the order, but that doesn't mean that they're going to change their practice. And I think that's what we should be watching for over the next week, is whether this has been completely dropped, which I don't expect it will be. I expect, because the president made strong statements about those program areas where he doesn't want to see his administration put an emphasis, that they will find a way to make sure that in the federal spending, that federal spending aligns with what his priorities are. But when you look at the 2,600 federal programs that were on that list, one of the things people do not realize, there are a lot fewer federal employees today than there were 10 years ago. And when you have the responsibility to go through 2,600 programs and try to align specifics with the administration's priorities, make that report and do that in a timely and efficient way, we're in the swamp. It's difficult, if not almost impossible to do. So I think they had a good idea in sense of they wanted to find a way to make that alignment, but it became too controversial and not worth the fight. And it's also a very negative story that stays in the press for too long.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. I think we all will obviously be paying close attention. We appreciate that you are on our behalf as well. So the information you can share based on, having your ear to the ground is very helpful, and we appreciate that you can share with us what insider information you have when you have it. So thanks for continuing to provide that information. Are there any other questions for Mr. O'Donnell? No? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. The next item on our agenda, I think, Mr. Minicucci, you're going to provide an update for us for our 2025 committee calendar dates and times.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the committee, and Jeff, if you could bring up that document. Thank you. What it is that the 2025 LUPS schedule came out, and it ends up that it now there are 3 dates, and they're in red. You can see it. I think Jeff's showing you 2 of them that are as needed legislative meetings, and they do conflict with the LUPS schedule. They're not our regular monthly meetings for IGR. And it's because the 5 o'clock time, conflicts with the 5 o'clock LUPS, which is one of the formal, 2 formal standing committees of the council. So with those meetings, we would most likely to be able for the councilors to be able to attend. The committee would most likely either need to move the time back to like 4 o'clock, and that's, I don't know if Mr. Thompson's still here, but yeah, I don't know what the possibility is of the counselor of the lobbyists being able to attend, or Mr. Libby and Mr. Anderson might be able to answer that, or just remove the meetings is another option, since they are as needed during the legislative sessions.
Yep.
So I think that's item 1 on that. The second item, these are in green. Member Feeble-Corn has a pre-existing booking or meetings during the on Saturday mornings, so she can't make 10. She could make 12 or after, but she also indicated that she fully understands if the rest of the committee can't move it. She fully understands that also. So that's the kind of report as to how the committee would like to proceed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Minicucci. I think that, do you have a recommendation, Mr. Minicucci, for another day? And because I don't believe that 4 o'clock ends up working for our folks that are in Santa Fe, just based upon how the committees are running and the calendars running at the state, at the legislature. So moving the time to 4 o'clock from what our team has indicated would be unlikely that we'd have our state lobbyists available to us. The only other suggestion I could think of is if we moved it to a different day of the week rather than, I think those are Wednesdays. So is there I mean, I know you didn't have this suggestion to look at the calendar, Mr. Minicucci, but I don't believe that we have committee meetings on Thursday evenings.
Madam Chair, correct. The council does not have committee meetings. That is definitely an option. Now, one thing is that we had during this time, the legislature, because we weren't at, if you notice that the 12th and the 26th, we are still not yet at everyday meetings. So we tried to separate them equally as much as we could. But we could sure move them back a day, or we could move them back forward a day and probably not be too close to meetings, especially since they're just as needed. So
Correct.
yes, that's definitely an option.
So may I say something, Madam
Yes,
Chair?
yes, Counselor.
We have budget meetings. I don't have the calendar in front of me, but we'd have to make sure that the committee of the whole meetings aren't on any of those Thursdays.
And actually, Madam Chair, Member Council Grout's correct. We do have we do have a couple 2 Cal meetings that would be occurring and I don't have quite the Cal list at in front of me. I do know the current schedule doesn't conflict with the Cal meetings. I don't know though if moving it forward on these dates would conflict with it. So there's possibility of moving the meeting back a day to Tuesday.
Thank you, Counselor Grout. We do not have a Cal meeting on the 13th, which is the Thursday after the day if we move it to the Thursday after the 12th.
Okay.
We just check the calendar to make sure that we don't have that conflict. So I would recommend we move to the 13th, and then the second date is on there. I'm sorry, I can't quite read it. So
26th.
the 26th.
And we have committee of the whole on the 27th.
So we would not be able to move the 26th to the 27th.
And Madam Chair, just looking at my calendar, just briefly, I have Water Authority on, or we have Water Authority on February the 5th.
Which means I do too.
Mhm.
And then March 5th would be the same. So I don't know if we just keep this as is. I don't know. I know it's really hard to coordinate all our schedules, but I don't know.
Thank you, Councilor Pena. May I ask a question because I don't have the committees in front of me? So Councilor Grout and Councilor Pena, are you members of LUPS?
I am a member of LUPS.
Okay, and I believe that Councilor Feeber-Corn is as well.
Yes, she's the chair.
Okay, so we would I will say this, I wonder if everyone is comfortable if staff has the meeting, as long as we have someone to run the meeting as a committee member and then report back information, as long as these committee meetings that we're talking about are simply for reporting out updates from both state and federal lobbyists. Are we comfortable with that? So that we don't miss out on the updates, and then of course staff can report to us if we on our behalf to us so that we don't miss information.
I'm good with that.
Counselor Penny, are you okay with that?
I am.
Great. Well, with that in mind, I would actually recommend that we, thank you, Counselor Pinion, that we leave this calendar as is. And knowing that in many cases, these meetings will be canceled because of, that was our intent, was to, of course, have the availability if we need it. I'll ask staff to make sure that we manage the calendars, and I think they've been doing a great job. We have had a couple meetings canceled, and we had this one today because there was an update to provide. And so I think we're good at this point, Mr. Menicucci, to keep this calendar if the committee agrees.
Then, Madam Chair, we'll do, just one thing I would ask is that if we do have the meetings, that at least one member, Mr. Whalen or Mr. Anderson, show up to chair it, that we do have an official member being able to chair.
Absolutely. We'll ensure that there is always a member available.
Thank you.
Great. I think with that, if
Um,
there is, go ahead. Is there any other business, Mr. Menicucci?
Yeah, did you want to address the 10 o'clock issue, or do you just want to keep it for now? That'd be the Saturday meetings.
I think our goal is to leave this at this time. I asked the staff related to what time Saturday the session starts typically, and they said 10:30 is the call time typically. So if we moved it later, our lobbyists, state lobbyists, would be unavailable very likely. So I think it kind of negates the potential, the use of it if it's during a time that they can't be with us. Thank you. With that, is there any other business of the committee?
Nope.
Great. Seeing no other business, we are adjourned. Thank you all for your
Thank
time
you.
this evening.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.